Hello, future viewers! Are you ready to look at one of the earliest real-time strategy games ever to be released? This thing came out before Warcraft, it came out before Dune 2. This was 1989 stuff. It was extremely innovative. I also like how it refers to the player and computer as user brain versus computer brain. Anyway, maps. It doesn't really have a linear campaign, but it has plenty of kind of situations to put you on, and these maps are not symmetrical. In that map, for example, the main base at the top has several smaller bases close to it, whereas they're kind of farther away from the one at the bottom. The advantages like that tend to be given to the computer side. But this game holds up, or at least held up decently well for player versus player as well. I had some fond memories of that. Well, the way that you get income is to capture bases using infantry. And speaking of innovating real-time strategy, this is also hero-based real-time strategy. So it's kind of a hybrid RTS and MOBA. Of course, you don't gain levels, but that player avatar is a fairly potent fighting force, as I'll explain in a little more detail later. Well, in addition to income, bases refuel your energy, which you need to do anything, and you can also pick up units that you've queued up for building there. Well, I say queued up, but you can only command one at a time to be built. So positioning is very important. That's why I'm moving to the upper right instead of something closer and easier. What I'd like to do is capture the 3 bases in the upper right corner, and that'll give me a good advantage to move to the left and approach the enemy base. That base just to the that small base just to the right of the enemy blue base is what I would consider the map-defining thing if you want to assault the enemy and end the game. About how money works in this game. It works a little differently from any other game that I've played in that you not only pay for the unit, but also the order that you give it. The least expensive is stay in place, which it doesn't move and it shoots anything nearby. The most expensive is attack the enemy main base, which is how you win. Right now what I'm going to try to do is the enemy, well, being very efficient with its menu selection and stuff, happens to capture a little faster than I did, so it has a head start on this base. But it doesn't really check its radar all that often, at least not for me in particular. So I can often just kinda move past it, or it'll just let me intercept its infantry, and giving the infantry the order to capture a base is actually pretty expensive. Like, the order is 3 times more expensive than the actual unit is. I don't... Okay. Going after a base like this is a commitment. It is very far from risk-free. I'm not sure I disagree with that. Otherwise... I was about to say otherwise it would make spamming units a little bit too good, but you can't really spam units in this game. You can only build them one at a time, you can only carry one at a time, so directing large numbers of them is pretty tough. So, your player avatar jets, which transform into mechs on the ground, they tend to eat just about any unit, especially one-on-one, which makes it a little bit tough to create any kind of map control. The best of this type, which I'm trying to put together, is the SAM, which fires pretty strong guided missiles at the enemy jet. The thing is, you need more than one in order to really make it work. And the AI kind of knows this and will go out of its way to destroy SAMs that are on their own. And the AI has some advantages. It instantly knows where you put those things and will go after them without mercy. Like, I've tested this. I've created a SAM, went back a fair ways away from my base and just planted it basically in the middle of nowhere, and the AI just went straight for it. Oh well. The solution is to put it in a place that's hard to land and sort of guard it yourself while you're making more. And once you get 3 of them, it's easier to keep them alive. Critical mass, however, is 4 because it takes 4 missiles to knock out the other player. This does not mean that they're invulnerable after that. The AI does occasionally like to drop tanks on the way to you, like so. But if your units are on the other side of the base, it's hard for the AI to get at them. Remember, orders in this game are not precise, although that tank, I think if it was given the order to search and destroy enemies, probably would have noticed that they were there, went for a cheaper option. And that's what happens when you have 4 SAMs there. That's a pretty good defensive start, but I need to move to the left afterwards. And part of that is going to be walking these SAMs forward a bit. And, by the way, that's a supply vehicle. This game, another thing that it does which is very unusual, is that it keeps track of ammunition for every unit in the game. It also keeps track of fuel, just like it keeps track of your fuel. Although, ground units that run out of fuel don't explode like yours does. They just become unable to move. SAMs in particular are prone to running out of ammo. Each one of them only carries 10 missiles, which is why having a supply unit positioned just so can be very helpful. The problem is that they are very difficult to place and very finicky about where they can go. Imagine them being around twice as large as they are. That is, twice double each of its dimensions, and you'll have a better idea. Perhaps even more than that. The game will disallow you to from placing them at places where it looks like it should easily fit, and that also seems to hinder its movement. I don't know why it has that problem. I don't know of any other vehicle that suffers from it nearly as much either. Anyway, it seems that the AI is going for a different base, so a different neutral base, in fact, and that's not such a great move. At least ignoring what I'm doing is not such a great move, because taking an enemy base, especially one that puts me in a good position to advance, that's a problem. However, I'm running afoul of something that's kind of generally the case in this game, and that is defending a base is a lot easier than attacking one. And travel time is one of these issues, which is you can create infantry very fast and just dump it right next to your base to retake those slots. And then there's the issue of the main base, which I will tackle a bit later. In that case, the AI tends to benefit a little bit more than you do. So many things to talk about in this game. So what I'm going to do right now is, once again, walk my SAMs forward, but it's very easy to get caught up with kind of mundane things like moving units, and then, oh, you didn't pay attention to your fuel, and you crash. Crashing is either a very big setback or a slap on the wrist, depending on a few circumstances. If you're kind of on the back foot, the enemy is close to your main base and all that, You reform after not too long, and you don't start with much energy. However, if the enemy is at your doorstep, you can go out and start fighting immediately. If you're on the offense, like I am, and you're kind of on the other side of the map and then explode, that is a huge setback because the enemy is kind of free to move forward and attack you repeatedly while you take forever to get back there. It is a problem. Well, though the way to push the enemy off of base is by moving SAMs and other units nearby, provided that you can build up enough of them and, you know, keep them supplied with ammo. There's more than one way to supply a unit, by the way. You can repair it and reload it by picking it up and hovering over your base, and you'll get the unit you're carrying will be just supplied just like your plane is. Oh, just check the radar, and once again, the enemy has moved elsewhere, so this seems like a good time. And if it comes back to defend itself, well, I'll just move the SAMs forward again, and eventually we'll dislodge them. Once we have this base, moving forward is going to be easier because there won't be a river in the way. A fun thing that I didn't even really think about until after this playthrough is infantry can actually scale cliffs. That's pretty cool. I'm fairly sure vehicles cannot, which makes moving them around this map a little more tricky, especially because repair trucks seem to just love falling off cliffs. Like, I'll have a repair truck, a unit that needs supplies in front of it, and a cliff behind it, and it'll still find a way to fall down. I've never seen such bad pathfinding in a game. Although I'm sure there are games that can compete with it, I just have not personally played them. Well, I have a new forward position now, and a fair amount of money to burn. So let's go forward and clear out defenses. One of the things about the AI, especially at higher levels, is that they tend to get units placed over their close spaces for free. So there will always be a tank and an armored car unit there, just right at the start. I believe they also have a free tank by the island base, and I think they have more on AI Type D as well. But as you can see, with such a short distance between the bases here, capturing that one is very fast. And moving the units forward is similarly fast. The enemy just ran out of energy, by the way, and that's because I believe they planned to go to the base I just captured and kind of got stranded. It's pretty rare for the AI to crash like that. That exclamation mark means that the unit is out of ammo. It can also happen when the enemy is out of fuel for movement, but in this case, these units are given the don't move order. And normally I don't use that order because units like tanks especially are pretty decent at seeking out and killing enemies. But I need SAMs to be grouped together because if they don't have that critical mass, the computer is pretty good at landing quickly and killing one of them before it gets shot down. It's also not a bad idea to put a couple of your own tanks in front of the SAMs to stop any enemy drops, because this is not a game where you can direct units to specifically attack one kind of enemy unit or one particular enemy unit. Well, except for the player craft, of course. You can direct that however you want. Anyway, now that I have the base right next to the enemy main base, it's time to start thinking about how we're going to tackle it. This is actually a pretty thorny and time-consuming kind of thing. Remember, we have a respawning, no-cost death machine that's going to be on top of it at pretty much all times, that also gets continual recovery from the base. It's going to be a little rough. And of course, the enemy base also has plenty of free defenses right at the start. Fortunately, it doesn't take long to reload the missiles of a SAM. I think it takes 1 or 2 ticks. And as far as the effect of capturing small bases on your economy, it is a very strong effect, and getting choked out of bases is very difficult to recover from. To give you an idea, your main base gives you 40 money per second. Each base you capture, another 40 money per second. And having just your main base is extremely bad. I'm casually dealing with units that cost 4,000 plus here. Sending a single soldier out there to capture a small base costs 2,000. Well, the next step to dealing with the enemy stronghold is to kind of lure out the defensive forces. Oh hey, looks like the AI went somewhere they shouldn't have. And now things get to be kind of a slog. I want to try and move my SAMs forward so that they can kind of defend a piece of ground and keep them safe from the player, but that doesn't really work so well. It's kind of a finicky thing to do, and it can easily fall apart. I might be able to pull it off with some more practice, but right now I just do, though, dropping one unit at a time and distracting the enemy, and that happens. Most of the time, and in most of the gameplay I've seen, is players dropping one tank at a time over there and dealing some damage before the enemy can catch up to it. I would have liked to send a whole bunch of units at once and just demolish the base that way, but as you've seen, this game is not great about directing large numbers at once, plus, you know, the chasm and other difficulties. Anyway, that's Herzog Zwei. I love how the title screen makes it look like some sort of gritty, realistic game, and, well, you've seen what we got. Anyway, later everyone. Hope you enjoyed